Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, we are uh, having our class again today on Friday, 24th of January. We still have two class on the next Wednesday. It will be 28 or 29. Yeah, it will be on Wednesday, 29, and then on the last January 31, it will be a seminar on language teaching. Let me resume the uh, material that we already discussed for the last Wednesday. It is about IMRAT plus CAR. IMRAT, it means introduction, method, result, and discussion. And then we have conclusion, acknowledgement, and reference. For today, we still have the continuity of our lesson, our class for the uh, past meeting. And then I would like to invite our lecturers, Professor Dr. Peter John Warner, the founding president of board. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the mic to Prof. Peter. Prof. Peter, time is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Today, I want to talk to you about introduction standards because the introduction standards are a very important part of the paper. The body of a paper always begins with an introduction, and an introduction usually has areas of like a succinct description, a succinct description. Also, it usually has the historical antecedents. And also, it includes the very important part of the study objectives. So these are the three areas that are included inside a good introduction in a paper. And I would like to first start off and talk about the idea of framing. Framing is how we frame the importance of the problem that we are actually trying to discuss in our paper. So basically, so we can think of a frame where we're trying to frame, we're trying to talk about the issues that are being touched on and the effects and other outcomes. So we want to look at the effects and outcomes of past research. And we want to prepare some type of a story, which is going to provide a frame for our fundamental theory that we're trying to look into, or the fundamental problem, if we're actually looking at a problem. So we try to apply these when we are looking at framing our paper. So so this would be called a proper framing. Incorporating the three concepts that I talked about earlier. So the first area I'd like to talk a little bit about is historical antecedents, which I had listed up here. Okay. Historical antecedents. So historical antecedents are where we actually review the literature very clearly to convey to the readers what the scope of our problem is in our paper that we're actually going to be talking about. We need to talk about the context. The context. We need to talk about the theoretical implications that we're going to have in our paper. And also we can look at practical applications if we're doing something these two are very important in depending on what type of paper we're actually trying to write and what type of information we're trying to gather. So we need to clarify these elements in the paper and make them the subject of our investigation. So look at prior investigations and try to tie these into what our paper is going to actually be coming in discussing. So what type of things can we look at? We can look at any type of key issues that might, like keywords, we can look at key issues that are tied in with our topic, key issues. We can also look at other areas such as maybe some debates. If you're looking at reviewing some debates or some conferences where they had debates, we can also look at theoretical frameworks or barriers. Theoretical framework on which we might build ours, or we might look at barriers. What might be stopping us from actually moving forward in our research? We might look at other areas like we can look at knowledge gaps. The gaps that are, we want to try and fill these gaps of knowledge based on past research. And we can look at the practical needs. Why do we need to do it? Practical needs. Why do we need to do this research? Why is it, how can we apply it? How can we make it practical? So if we include these type of descriptions, these will help us show how our work can build up and how we can create a paper that can be an accomplished paper inside the field in which we are actually working towards. So the first area we have to do is we have to try and articulate our study goals. Well, we need to articulate our study goals. We need to clearly state and look at what our aim of our paper is. What is the objective of the paper? What is the goal of our study? What is the goal of our study? What are we trying to reach out towards? So we need to make an explicit rationale. So that we can understand why this paper is actually appropriate. And we also should have the aims and the goals within this. Within the rationale, these things should be identified. So we need to describe these goals in a way that clarifies the appropriateness of the method that we are going to use, of the method we're going to use. So the first goal that I want to talk about today is qualitative goals. Qualitative goals. Now, in a qualitative article, the introduction should identify the primary or the second hypothesis. So we want to identify the primary and the main one, or the second hypothesis. What hypothesis are we going to be working on in our paper? And likewise, we want to look at any other possible exploratory hypotheses. These might be new hypotheses that we are interpreting or trying to apply to the study that we're actually working on. So by working these in, we can provide a deep understanding of our research paper, and then we can develop our paper more. The other area we have the qualitative goals. The quantitative goals is where we actually are looking at, sorry, I apologize. This is quantitative. I didn't mean qualitative. Quantitative. Quantitative. The other area is qualitative. Qualitative goals. Qualitative goals. I apologize. Okay. Qualitative goals are actually where we look at case examples or personal narratives. So we can be looking at in other words, in qualitative research, we actually have data that we're actually collecting. This is here we're working with hypotheses, but here we're actually looking at specific data with numbers in which we can actually calculate, and this can be applied. This can be applied to the hypotheses. In this way, it can tie in with the quantitative research. So we could combine with both of these. We have our mixed methods. If we use both quantitative actual data with numbers and with valid figures, and tie it in with hypotheses that are decided in quantitative studies, where we actually quantitatively try to explain what the research is actually showing. So what are some reporting standards that we have for quantitative research? What type of reporting standards do we actually have that are in place and that are how would I say it? That are actually suggested or recommended by many journals. So let's look at, first of all, quantitative reporting standards. Quantitative reporting standards. So what are the basic expectations of quantitative? Okay, first of all, we need to identify our variables and our issue. And the theoretical issues. The first thing we need to do when we're actually looking at our papers. So, and this can be done within actually, the first part is actually done within the title uh, of the section. But we need to identify these, and also, we need to identify the population, the subjects we study, which would be in the methodology section of a section, but we need to identify the population that's being studied. What is the population that we're looking at? So we need to identify that in our introduction also, past research. Likewise, we need to look at other authors, publications and research that provide data for us to refer to. So we need to make authors notes. We need to look at various authors. Inside our introduction. And when we do this, we will look at one area of information. We could get register, we have information that is not registered yet. This might not be published yet, but it's actually in line to be published. But if we know an author and we know the research that they've done, then we can actually refer to them and get permission from them to actually make a reference to that data that they're actually using, even before they actually get theirs published inside a journal. Likewise, we can use data that we use data in previous publications. This is registered. So basically, we get various data from other publications that actually would support or provide a base for us to actually build our research on. Other things we might include inside the introduction would be what our sources of funding or support are. If you have a grant or some type of your university is providing money and working with you on this research that you're working on, or if you're actually a graduate student and actually your professor has money within their department or something, this you would include inside the introduction area of your paper. It's very important to give recognition to the organizations or the professors who are helping you with your paper. Likewise, we need to talk about the anything we need to talk about here. We need to talk about in the author notes, we would talk about relations or affiliations that might be a conflict of interest. Okay, so if you are actually doing some type of research, say you're trying to do research on a product that is sold by some company, and if you have bias or something towards that company, and therefore the research, it may steer towards the other direction, you might want to mention that to give your study validity. Because if you don't mention it and then somebody finds out about that later, then it could cause problems inside your research. So make your research very clear. If you are, if there is a conflict of interest, if your area of research overlaps with an area that is probably covered by a company or something and the school, then you have to make that clear in your paper. And that way you address the problem before it might become a problem later on. Furthermore, we can look at previous affiliations in different locations, but basically the one main thing we need to have is the contact information and the author. We need citations. You need citations. There are many citations inside the introduction. Most of your citations should actually be in your introduction, because this is where we're actually referring to other research that we're building our research on and trying to make it valid and provide a purpose for the reader to understand why we are actually pursuing this research. So this should support and make your paper stronger. But if you have limited citations from other authors or journals or areas to support you in the introduction, this can make it more difficult to validify, make your paper more valid and credible. Now, the last thing would probably be any additional information that the reader should know that you maybe you know, but you want to include it inside the introduction so that they know further details. Then you should include that in this area also. Now the other thing we have is the inside the introduction, we should basically inside the introduction in quantitative design paper, we should actually be looking at the problem. The problem that you are working with should be clearly stated. The problem should be clearly stated. State why it's important, and again, the theoretical and the practical problem on why it is theoretically or practically not appropriate. So anyway, I've covered the scholarships already. The hypothesis or aims or the objectives. This is the very important part. I mentioned it earlier. Aims or objectives. This is the most important part in your paper. In other words, what are the theories used to derive your hypothesis? So get the other theories that you are using to derive your hypothesis. So the other theories that you're referring to, those should be included here. Again, I said you should have the primary and the secondary theories. Primary is the main theory you're actually working with. A secondary theory would be another theory that builds on the primary theory and helps you build up your paper. The other thing you should include inside your introduction is any planned analyses you plan to do. What type of form are you going to do to analyze your paper? So with moving on to this, I would like to move into the method section of the introduction. And the method section on the introduction, you would probably have the following. Method section. In our method section, we should provide all of the criteria and the characteristics of our environment. All of our criteria, the data, and the characteristics of our environment. The context. Who are we studying in our paper? So characteristics could be, what can characteristics be? They could be age, sex, the ethnicity, race, they could be the socioeconomic status. Are they in the wealthy sector, or are they in the lower income sector? What is their status in the society? These are all areas that could actually be in characteristics. If we're looking at animals, then we look at the species or the number of animals we're actually working with. Again, and probably still talk about some of these characteristics within the animals that we're actually working with. When we describe procedures for participants, we need to describe our sampling method. How do we gather our participants? Do we just choose them because we have a class that we're teaching? Maybe you're an English teacher and you teach at a university, so you have access to a certain class, and you've noticed certain things, so therefore you decided to perform a research with that type of class, and therefore for that reason you're selected those participants. How do you get a percentage of your sample justified? There are different ways to see what is a appropriate number to do different quantitative studies. Likewise, you need to describe your setting and location. Where is it located at? Is in the setting and location. Is it at a university, tertiary level? Is it a secondary level in high school? Where is the location that you actually are doing your study? And you should talk about any agreements or payments. Many studies, we use research money from our university or from a grant. And if a person fills out a questionnaire or does a certain amount of work to try and contribute to your study, then they get a certain amount of money, maybe 1,000 yen. For example, a student might get 1,000 yen to spend 30 minutes to fill out a questionnaire. And then you collect all these questionnaires. So if you have 30 participants, it'll cost you 30,000 yen to have these participants involved in the study. The other thing we look at is sample size and the precision. Like I mentioned, the more people we have, usually the higher the credibility of our study. But usually there are limitations because when we try to control a certain group, there are limitations that limit the number of people that we can actually do the study with. The other thing we like to do, I'd like to mention that as used is what instruments do we use? Instruments for measure. So in other words, if we're doing a psychological study, we might be using a psychological questionnaire to determine what the personality of the subjects are inside the study. So we call this psychometrics that we're actually referring to when we're actually looking at the people. So what else do we have inside quantitative studies? Like I said, the we might have diagnostics data. So we want to do data, and we either get it in a longitudinal design or we get it in another design. But how we collect our data and how we report it is very important. The results section of a quantitative study, if we're looking at the results section, usually we will be looking at following areas. And following methods, usually move into results. And then results section. And usually in our results section, we would talk about the participant flow. So here we actually give the results of all of our participants and we summarize them. So what the total numbers are of the participants and what stages they went through. We would probably talk about the recruitment also here, but recruitment can be discussed inside the methods section. But inside the results section, we would probably talk about the measures we did for follow-up. So in other words, in the results section, we might change the methodology a little bit to adjust to the environment, and therefore we might find some other problems that we need to address. So therefore, we would look at this area also. What are statistics and data analysis we look at in this area? Statistics and data analysis. So the actual numbers we have, but if we have any missing data, we should include it. We need to include both the data and missing data. So if for some reason we cannot use some of the results from some of the subjects, for example, maybe they missed one or two of the tests, therefore we have to pull them out of the study because they didn't fulfill all the requirements for doing all the tests that you were actually doing for the subjects. So we need to look at the empirical evidence and theoretical arguments very carefully and provide very clear evidence of what was the results of what we actually found. We cannot just get rid of some of the results just because it does not fit in with our theory and it won't work. We cannot just delete that. We do need to mention it. And if we do mention this missing data, then we need to explain why it's missing. Why couldn't the people take the test, or why couldn't they do the survey or whatever task was given for them. The following our results for quantitative research, we have the discussion. And the discussion section should provide a statement of our statement of support or non-support. So in other words, we have to take the data that we actually had from the results and we have to actually discuss what supports our hypotheses or what does not support our hypotheses. And we need to distinguish this and make it very clear. Furthermore, we need to discuss any similarities or differences in past research. So we compare our research to the past research. If there's something that supports ours from the past, we can talk about that inside our inside the discussion section. Or if it does not support something from the past, and we think that it's very important and it might change a theoretical principle, then we would talk about the differences in our study and why they are different, why they are acceptable. The other thing that's very important in our discussion is the generalizability. Generalizability. Generalizability is the ability to generalize our research and actually apply it to other research that's actually out there in the field. So if you can make your research generalizable enough that it can be applied to other research, then it is very valuable. And therefore, this makes it a high quality research that you can actually use. The last thing that you should have in a discussion, and also is very important, and that would be the talking about the implications of future research. The implications for the future research, or the program or the policy. It could be a program or it could be a policy that's applied, depending on what type of research you're actually doing. But how does it, how can the research that you did be developed further? How can another author try to make further development by studying another area of your research? So if you can mention what the drawbacks are in your research, maybe you didn't study a certain population, maybe you didn't use a certain method for your research, which by applying another method, maybe you might be able to get some better data from that. So then that would be the way we can do quantitative research. Now, the other, this is the main areas for introduction, the methodology, the methodology, the results, and the discussion. This is the ways that we can actually develop this in quantitative research. Now, the qualitative research, in qualitative research, we actually are concentrating more on numbers. We look at the same thing as quantitative research, but in qualitative research, there is an emphasis on number generated data. So number generated data. In other words, the numbers actually help support. And if we try to tie in quantitative and qualitative together to get our mixed research, then when we have the mixed research, we can actually tie these two together to make a very well-developed paper and have a paper that is considered to be appropriate and more acceptable. So these are the ways that we can actually improve our papers and make them more appropriate for the reporting standards. And I think that was the main things I wanted to cover today. But the other thing I will move on to is moving past the quantitative and the qualitative and the mixed. The last one I want to talk about is the meta-analysis standards. Meta-analysis standards. And let's apply this to the quantitative method. Quantitative. Look at the quantitative area first. If we take a quantitative meta-analysis standards are usually available, but the one feature is that makes them different from other studies is they have there's usually articles that have been published in the numeral estimates or the sizes are clear. Numeral estimates or sizes are clear with a more detailed analysis. That's why it's called a meta-analysis. So we have basic expectations, but then we want to move past those expectations and look at a more detailed analysis of these areas. And with if we apply more, if we use an SPSS or other area and try to apply a higher level standards to our research in quantitative and qualitative research, then these are referred to as meta-analysis standards, which can make our paper even more valid or a higher quality paper. However, these standards require very clear understanding of statistics and being able to apply those principles inside your paper. So statistics is playing a larger role in research nowadays. So statistics is actually very important in developing the paper and giving it a higher standard so that you actually have a very strong paper that can be considered a high quality research journal paper. So with these areas, I did not touch on I'm touching on the body of the paper today. So these are the areas I wanted to touch on today. And I think I have 10 minutes or so to answer any questions if there are any questions. So that's the main area I wanted to touch today for these three areas. Is there any questions? You can put it inside the inside.
Okay. Thank you, Sensei. We already learned from Sensei about the introduction, how to start the article. Yeah. With wait a moment. Yeah. We already learned from Sensei that how to write down the introduction. In the same times, there's actually somehow there is another kind of opportunity for um, a writer or author to put out and not only as the beginning of the paper, but it will show somehow the state of the art. So that is the main one that should be in introduction. The
Yeah.
second things in the introduction that should state what is the objective of the paper. So it might be in the end of the paragraph or in the end section of the introduction. One more things that actually introduction is the quote and quote as the beginning for authors and reader to start to describe or to portray of the situation over there. That's some notes from me, and then I'd like to invite everyone if you have any kind of questions, comment, or anything about the explanation from Sensei. Another question, Sensei. How we should build the argument in introduction. Times your Sensei.
Basically, like I mentioned earlier, when we to state your problem very clearly, or the hypothesis that you're trying to um, analyze and prove, um, if you should tie it in with past research to try and support your theory and develop that in the introduction. If you don't have past research, then you need to explain how you actually came up with this theoretical idea, and um, you may have come up with it by yourself because of the practical application of other work you've been doing in the field, which has not even been discussed. In this area, in this case, you may not be able to have a lot of support, but you could actually refer to that also in the introduction area, telling how you actually became interested in this area and how were how how you felt strongly motivated to actually pursue the study and generalize this area so that other people could actually understand it better. So that's what I believe is important in the introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Sensei. I would like to invite everyone to raise any kind of comment, questions, or anything about how to write the introduction. And once again, the focus on introduction is about state of the art. So it should explore over there what is the previous research published, and then what is the difference between this article with the other publication, with the others publication that already published. That should be a part of the introduction. And the second one should identify the objective, what is the author would like to do with this article. That's at least the content of the introduction. In the state of the art, not only the same or the differences between uh, the others publication or the other research that already published, but at the same time, the article should maintain, yeah, what is the new with this article. When it is written in internet, we call it a state of the art. When it is uh, show in the discussion, it means novelty. Yeah. So again, I would like to invite any one of you, if you have any kind of questions, comment, and reply. But if you don't have any, our next class will be next Wednesday and Friday, inshallah. And then I would like to invite Sensei to say something as the closing statement to close our class for today. It's
Um,
yours, Sensei.
So thank you for listening. And since I covered today, in strongly introduction because that's the most important part. But I also went into the um, results and discussion area. Basically, this is a moving into the next section, which on Wednesday, next week I will plan to talk about writing style and grammar, and actually how we can effectively make a creative writing style within the text and throughout the paper, in the introduction, in the results, in the discussion, actually throughout the whole paper, how we can actually apply the appropriate writing style for academic writing, and the use of specific type of grammar structures that academic papers are asking for, or in general. So this is what I will hope to cover in the next session, Wednesday. So if you can join then, please do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sensei, for your kind opportunity for us. And then the next Wednesday, we will continue our class to maintain this joint class together. And then on the Friday, we will have the seminar with us as the end of the joint class with Prof. Peter John Warner from Pahok University as the support of BOLT, yeah, Balsamo Outreach Teaching and Learning. That's all. And